So this reevaluation and review of the Greenbelt lands, will this be a full and proper process? What role will the Housing Minister's Chief of Staff play? What role will the bureaucrats play? What role will other land use planning experts play? And how will it be different from what just happened?
Well, we're going to go through the government deputy ministers and government officials to review all lands. It was mandated back in 2005 from the previous government that they should review every 10 years. And let me remind everyone, in 2005, under the Liberal government, there was no consultation. There was no consultation with First Nations. There was no consultations with communities. We're going to make sure that we consult with everyone. To make the appropriate changes, we're going to do a complete review. We're following the recommendations of the Auditor General, and we'll continue to follow the recommendations. But there's going to be a complete review from top to bottom, and then they're going to have to stand on their own merit. And it's not just the 14 lands, it's going to be the 700 or 800 lands right across the board.
Did you know that Steve Clark was going to resign yesterday morning, or were you taken by surprise when it appeared on Twitter?
No, Steve Clark called me, and he said, and this is why I always say, it shows the integrity of Steve Clark, shows the maturity of Steve Clark. He has served his constituents right from day one, from being mayor all the way through as MPP and minister, and he thought it'd be best for the government and for his family and his constituents that he steps aside.
Hi, Premier. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I just want to be absolutely clear here. Are you pausing all development or assessment for development on these lands that you have removed from the Greenbelt and revisiting them? Or are you just, like, what are you doing exactly? Are you not going ahead with your plan to develop on the Greenland?
Well, the provincial facilitator will continue working with the landowners and the builders to move forward, but it's going to be based on the merits. The merits, I know, I always say, you know, the process, I've come up here, I've never shied away from the media, I've been coming up frequently, but they're going to review the whole process, not just the 14 lands, the 700 or 800 applications, and they'll be able to sit down and talk to stakeholders, be it the Indigenous communities, people that need homes. We'll be talking to communities, and we'll do a complete review.
So is it possible that you will now, is it possible that you would open up other lands for development as part of this review?
Well, first of all, we're going to see what the review says at the end of the review, and we'll analyze it. That will be up to the minister to make that decision.
Hey, good morning, Premier. Colin DeMello with Global News. I wanted to ask you about the mandate letter that you had given to Steve Clark in 2022. It specifically asked him to open up lands of the Greenbelt. Did he have the power to say no to that mandate letter?
Well, every minister has the opportunity to sit down with myself. I'm pretty accessible. I've been told I'm probably the most accessible premier that's ever existed. I take calls from my MPPs. I take calls from my ministers. I take calls from mayors right across this province. And I listen to their concerns. We have a great working relationship with 444 mayors and wardens across this province. I'm in constant communication with them, not just about building homes, even though that's the #1 issue our province is facing, the #1 issue facing Canadians right across this country. They have access to give me a call at any time, and if they have other concerns, we address those concerns, and we have a great working relationship.
Okay, and I wanted to ask about the relationship between the government and the owners of those 15 parcels of land. Did your government enter into any legally binding contracts with those owners to stipulate that they would have to build X amount of housing on that land? Was there a contract between the Ontario government and the owners, or is it just up to a handshake?
Well, that's going to be up to the facilitator to make sure that these lands include community centers, hospitals, long-term care, parks, and that's something that we wouldn't be able to do if a builder down the street, for instance, decides to build. We don't go up and say, you got to build this, you got to build that. We rely on the municipalities to build homes, to make sure that they get the permits out in a timely fashion. We've given them every single tool possible to make sure it makes their life easier to get homes built. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make sure that we build those 1.5 million homes for people that, you know, I talk to hundreds and hundreds of people weekly, monthly. I talk to someone on the weekend, you know, a family that's concerned about their young son that won't be able to afford a home. Another person had their home burnt down. It burnt down, they couldn't afford a new home. We're gonna exhaust every avenue in looking at modular homes, traditional builds. We're gonna exhaust every avenue in Ontario. We're gonna go across the country to make sure that if they're modular home builders, that we bring them into Ontario. You know, I have a great friend, you know, Blaine Higgs, the Premier of New Brunswick, that told me that they have 4 companies that build modular homes in New Brunswick. And after we exhaust all other avenues, we're going to go to the US and encourage them to open up their plants in Ontario to build modular homes.
Hey, Premier. Aidan Schmandy of the Trillium.
Hi.
So Minister Clark resigned for not keeping a close enough eye on his staff and letting this whole process get out of hand, but your mandate letter told Minister Clark to come up with, and I'm quoting, processes for swaps, expansions, contractions, and policy updates for the Greenbelt, and to finish it all by fall of 2022.
Yes.
At no point did you or anyone in your office really check in with Clark's office along the way. So are you not guilty of the same thing that Minister Clark resigned over?
Well, I have confidence in our ministers. There's one thing, folks, that I don't believe in, micromanaging, even in my private company. When I had it, I don't believe in micromanaging managers. I don't believe in micromanaging ministers. I have confidence in our ministers and to follow the process. You know, Minister Clark came out, admitted the process wasn't there. It could have been better. I came out and said the process wasn't there. We've taken 14 recommendations from the Auditor General. We're moving as we speak on those 14 recommendations. And we're going to do a complete review of all lands in the Greenbelt as it was mandated by the previous government. As the previous government changed it 17 times. As the previous government didn't consult with anyone when they took 2 million acres of privately owned property off people and just moved forward with it with no consultation. We're going to make sure that we review every single aspect of making sure that we follow the process. But the most important thing is the people that are hurting out there that can't afford a home, on top of the interest rates that we're seeing 10 hikes from the Bank of Canada in 18 months. You know, I plead to the Bank of Canada, the governor, go out there, talk to the average person like I do. Go out there and meet the people that are struggling. People that can't afford a mortgage because of rate hikes, not just the hikes, but the speed that you did it at. 10 hikes, I can't remember in living memory that the Bank of Canada or the governor raised rates 10 times in 18 months. If we don't see this stop, people will lose their homes. They're struggling. Mortgages have doubled. There's no reason to raise or hike rates. What they should be doing, the federal government, which is separate from the Bank of Canada, should be investing in infrastructure like the 413 to get goods from point A to point B in a more efficient manner, to make sure people can get home a lot quicker than rather than being stuck on the highway of the 401 or stuck on the 400. That's the reason we're investing over $30 billion, unprecedented, in building highways, be it 413, the Bradford Bypass, widening Highway 3, expanding Highway 7, building Highway 7 from Kitchener all the way to Guelph. Our province is growing like we've never seen. We're the fastest growing region in North America, bar none. We have to make sure that we build the infrastructure. We're building $70 billion of transit, largest transit expansion in North America. There's no one that comes close to that. We already have shovels in the ground on the Ontario line. That's unprecedented, at the speed that we're moving. I can't remember the last time any government is building subways and tunneling at the speed we're doing. And we're going to continue pouring money into infrastructure. We've invested over $184 billion into infrastructure. That includes $50 billion building 50 new hospitals and additions to those hospitals, never been done before. That's what we're focusing on.
So I'd like to ask about the ongoing work of the facilitator. The Integrity Commissioner report said you guys have 8 agreements in principle with the landowners. If these are still going forward, will you commit to publicly releasing these agreements once they're finalized?
Once they're finalized, we'll release them. We're going to show how these builders, these landowners, are going to spend billions of dollars in supporting the community that they're building. They're going to be building parks, community centers. They're going to be building hospitals and long-term care. And we have all the confidence in the world in the facilitator, nonpartisan, and they'll be working hand in hand. But we'll also be reviewing all other applications right across the Greenbelt. Like the previous government mandated, it should be reviewed every 10 years.
Hi, Premier. Emma McIntosh from the Narwhal. So the Housing Affordability Task Force found that cutting into the Greenbelt isn't necessary, that Ontario already has enough land, but it did make 55 other recommendations. Your government's only finished 3 of them. Why not do that instead of opening up Greenbelt land or reinstate rent control on newer buildings to improve affordability?
Well, first of all, thank you for that question. They did have 70 recommendations. We're going through 30 of them already. We're going to follow up on the other 40. We're working as we speak right now. But in saying that, even the person that headed the review would admit right now, when they did that review, they didn't expect 500,000 people show up to our doors. And I always say that's a conservative estimate. I believe it's closer to 800,000 as a CIBC report came out that, we need to continue building homes. Right now, with the volume that we're seeing, and over the next 10 years, at minimum, there'll be 5 to 6 million people coming to our province. We do not have enough lands to be able to build enough homes for over 5 to 6 million people. Our number one goal for the people of Ontario is to make sure they have affordable homes. Have modular homes that they're going to be able to live in. I call them starter homes. I think everyone has went by and saw those wartime homes. They're going to be basic homes, and they're going to be affordable and attainable homes of under $500,000 that they'll be able to walk in through their front door, put the key in. They're going to have a backyard. They're going to have a finished basement that they can use as a rental unit. That's what we're going to focus on. But it's not about just modular homes. It's about building a community, having more rentals that people can afford. We had more rental starts than we've seen in decades. We're doing the right thing for the people that can't afford homes right now. We're going to fight for the hardworking, blue-collar people that are getting killed right now by the interest rates from the Bank of Canada. We're going to stand on their side. We're going to make sure it comes down to supply and demand that we all know that's out there right now. We're going to flood the market with new homes right across this province.
Premier, when it comes to Greenbelt land, doing this review, the reports from the Integrity Commissioner and the Auditor General found that, you and Minister Clark were not in control of what the government was doing. As you undertake this new review, how can Ontarians trust that you are in control now?
Well, let me first answer the first question, then I'll get to the second question about trust. We're going to work with our government officials. We're already admitted numerous times, and I've said it today, I'll say it again, the process, I wasn't happy with the process. We're correcting the process and the 14 recommendations. Then let me tell you about trust and why the people can trust this government. Results speak for themselves. Folks, when we took office back in 2018, I always give an analogy. We inherited a bankrupt company. We had a broken healthcare system that was totally broken. Move forward to 2023, we've added over 3,000 beds. We're adding another 3,200 beds. We've hired and registered 60,000 new nurses, 8,000 new doctors registered. Last year alone, 15,000 nurses, which was a record, registered here in Ontario. As I mentioned earlier, we're the only government that's putting $50 billion, no matter where you live in Ontario, you're either getting a brand new hospital or you're getting an addition to a hospital. The previous government stopped talking to the Ontario Medical Association. We have a great relationship with the OMA. We're in constant communication with the Ontario Hospital Association and the CEOs. We're making sure that when you go get a prescription, you don't have to go to your doctor to get the most common prescriptions. You can go into a pharmacy and get them, and we're going to expand on that. We're making sure that we're giving people opportunities on diagnostics, that we're going to have convenient care closer to home. Education, we're changing the education system for parents. We're making sure through the great leadership of Minister Lecce that we're investing right now $500 million building 100 new schools, and that's going to continue. Over $700 million more is being spent on hiring educators. We've hired, thousands and thousands of new educators, over 8,000. This year alone, we're going to hire an additional 2,000 more educators. When it comes to childcare, we've cut costs, 86,000 new childcare spaces. That's 86,000 families that are going to save anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a year. We have the three credit agencies that are giving us a positive report for the first time in decades. With economic development, folks, when I took office, companies were leaving in the droves. 300,000 families lost their jobs. They couldn't even get hired because companies were leaving in the droves. Not to mention General Motors Oshawa closed their plant and left. The other ones were ready to leave. But we came in and we changed the system. We took $8 billion of burden off the backs of companies to invest back here in Ontario. Since then, $25 billion of investments in the automotive sector, in the EV sector, have invested in Ontario because they have confidence in our government. Another $25 billion we'll see probably in the next year. $3 billion in life sciences, no matter if it's Moderna or if it's AstraZeneca or any of the other pharmaceutical companies, Roche, investing here in creating more jobs. The tech sector has grown to overtake Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area. We now employ more people than anywhere in North America. We're leading North America in job creation and economic development. Compared to back in 2018, that no one wanted to come, now thousands of companies, 85,000 new companies registered to open up here in Ontario last year alone. With infrastructure, as I mentioned, we're spending $184 billion. Previous governments totally ignored it. We're building 4 subway lines. We're spending over $70 billion in transit, expanding GO train service. We're expanding $30 billion of highways and roads and bridges. And when it comes to long-term care, the previous government, in their whole mandate of 15 years, built about 600 homes for long-term care. We're going to build 30,000 homes that seniors can call a home, that we're renovating long-term care homes right across the board. We've graduated over 65,000 STEM graduates. We've given the support to the colleges and universities that we have the best in the entire world. That's just a few of the things. Our track record speaks for itself. That's the reason the people of Ontario can trust our government.
Hi there, Alan Hale from Queen's Park today. So just to be clear, you're saying that this is not a backtrack of any kind. You're not giving into demands for a revisit of the Greenbelt. This is a review that you would have been doing anyway?
We're going to review the whole system, including the 14 properties. We're going to review all the properties. We acknowledge the process wasn't up to snuff by any means. But can I just finish my answer, please? Then I'll take your second one. We're going to make sure that all properties are reviewed, all 700 to 800. It's mandated in the legislation that we should review them. We're going to review them. We're going to make sure They stand with their merit, and that's what we're going to look at.
You talk about how you don't want to micromanage your ministers, but given the fact that you have had one minister give himself, many of your caucus, and some other party loyalists a title of King's Counsel without you apparently knowing, and now you've let another minister sleepwalk you into a scandal where it looks like where it looks to many people like a corrupt deal has happened. Maybe is it time for you to maybe check in a bit more with what your ministers are doing and read documents before they come to cabinet?
Well, thank you for that question. First of all, King's Counsel, people don't care. I'm going to be very frank about having KC beside their name. That's really in the legal sector, and we're going to move forward on that. And we're going to make sure at the end of the day, we have the best interest of the people at heart. That's the reason, folks, we're building these homes. Folks, I could just sit back and just say, forget about it. We aren't building homes. It's not under the province's mandate to issue permits. It's up to the municipalities. We see a crisis. As the other parties, be it the Green or the NDP and the Liberals, that put us in an absolute disastrous position in 2018 when I took office, we're fixing everything that was broken. They don't have a solution. All they do is get up and complain and criticize. Ask them, what is your solution? We have a solution. We have a plan. The plan is working. The plan is working in healthcare. The plan is working long-term care, in transportation, infrastructure, education, colleges and universities, and I could go on and on and on. We've corrected the problems of the previous government of 15 years that destroyed this province. No one in the world wanted to invest in Ontario. I was speaking to a large company the other day about investing in Ontario, and they have a plant in Australia, and they said it's amazing what Canada, Ontario in specific, are doing, how they're working hand in hand. You know, I work hand in hand with everyone. I don't care if the premier is from the NDP or the Liberals or if they're PC. It doesn't matter to me. We work collaboratively together. For instance, Premier Eby about the Bank of Canada. I'm sure he heard me complaining for the last 2 months about the Bank of Canada. And I can assure you, the rest of the premiers, because I talk to them frequently, feel the exact same. There isn't a premier in any province or territory that believes that the Bank of Canada should raise interest rates. Isn't it unusual? Even the banks, 3 banks came out to criticize them. But you know something? I have a message to the Bank of Canada. You want to destroy people's lives? You want to watch people go bankrupt and lose their homes? Just raise the interest rates. It's going to be on your hands. We don't need any more interest rates being raised. What we need infrastructure money to build highways. That's what we need.
It's Richard Southern with City News 680.
Hi,
Premier, you said today that Ontarians can trust you, but you've never told Ontarians exactly what you weren't happy about with this process. For 3 weeks, you've just said, I'm not happy with the process. In your own words today, can you tell us what went wrong here?
Well, there was 14 recommendations, and I said we're going to follow those 14 recommendations. You know, it was very clear with the Auditor General's report, the Integrity Commissioner's report, which I have a great deal of respect for the Integrity Commissioner, that these are the recommendations that they're putting forward. You know, we realize it. We admit our mistakes. I've come out here, we've apologized, we're moving forward, but nothing is more important than building homes. And we have a record of getting it done. As sure as I'm standing here, folks, there's going to be people that are going to be able to afford a home, an attainable home. There's going to be more rentals than there's ever been. That's our responsibility to make sure that we give the tools to the mayors and the wardens and councils all across this province. Get the tools to build homes. There's no more important issue to the people of Ontario right now. There's no more important issue for our government than to build homes that people can afford at a reasonable interest rate.
It didn't get an answer there, Premier, but I want to ask you about your new cabinet. Is shuffling Ms. Mulrooney out of transportation, is that an acknowledgement about some failings on the Eglinton Crosstown? And are we any closer to finding out when the Eglinton Crosstown is going to open?
Well, I'll answer that in two parts. First of all, let's talk about the Crosstown. The CEO, Phil Verster, will be out frequently, giving the people of Ontario an update. And as for Minister Mulrooney, I think her record speaks for herself. You know something? I've had the opportunity to know Minister Mulrooney for the last 5 years. And make no mistake about it, she's a brilliant person. She's worked in the private sector. She's worked in the financial sectors. And again, her record speaks for itself. Before we took office, there was no plans ever to build subways. Under her watch, under her leadership, there's 4 lines being built. There's expansion and GO train services across our province to a tune of $70 billion. The reason the people in southwestern Ontario are getting Highway 3 widened is because of Minister Mulrooney's leadership. The reason that we're building the Bradford bypass, that's Minister Mulrooney. The reason we're doing 413, Minister Mulrooney. The reason we're building Highway 7 that governments have talked about for years from Kitchener to Guelph is because Minister Mulrooney. She's done an incredible job in the transportation portfolio. She's going to do an incredible job watching every single penny for the taxpayers of this province.
Hi, Premier Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
Hi, Siobhan.
You said that lands will have to pass on their own merits. Can you explain what that means exactly, given what we saw in the Auditor General's report and the Integrity Commissioner's report, that lands were removed from the Greenbelt that didn't pass the kind of basics for servicing speed of development?
Well, thank you for that, Siobhan. First of all, I want to re-emphasize that I never hear. Folks, since I've taken office, the Greenbelt has expanded. It has not shrunk. There's 2,000 more acres in the Greenbelt that didn't exist before. And as for the merit, we're putting together a process through government officials that we're going to make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. We're going to make sure that there's merit to every application that comes forward. But in saying that, nothing, again, is more important than building homes for the people of Ontario.
There are lots of pictures online now of you and John Mutton. Can you shed any kind of light as to what role he might have had in having lands removed from the Greenbelt?
Well, this is a message to anyone, any advocacy work that people do. If you don't follow the rules, then you're going to be held accountable. And I encourage the Integrity Commissioner to hold people accountable that don't follow the rules. Folks, I meet with thousands, not thousands, tens of thousands of people every single year in every sector, no matter if it's the healthcare sector, manufacturing sector, making sure that we're building homes and endless amounts of sectors. I meet with the common folks. Do you know what I do? I want to find out what the people are doing. I don't go in with anyone. I don't go in with my detail or anything. I go into the local Walmarts. I go into the Home Depots. I go into the Sobeys and the Loblaws and the Metros to talk to people. I go into the Canadian Tires. That's where you get how people are feeling. You don't sit here in a bubble. You don't not give your phone number out. I talk to thousands and thousands of people. I hear what's going on. I talk to endless people on the weekends by going out into public and hearing what they have to say. And let me tell you something. I'll tell you what the priorities are. Number one priority is home ownership. Affordability. Affordability when you go to the gas pumps. Just imagine if our government didn't deduct over 10 cents because you have to add the PST into that. So it's over 10 cents a liter. Folks, just imagine when you're going to fill up, as we're being gouged at the gas pumps, we added that extra 10 cents. I want to work with the federal government when we build these homes to eliminate the HST, well, the GST on their behalf, and we'll do the same to make it more affordable. We want to make sure that when they go to a municipality on development fees, they don't get charged $130,000 to put shovels in the ground. That's what's costing people concern out there. We're making sure that the economy, these are the top 3 items, making sure the economy is working. We're leading North America. There's 700,000 more people working today. That's 700,000 families that can afford to put food on their table, to pay the rent. And the rents are ridiculous right now, but even save up to be able to buy a home. That's 700,000 more people compared to the previous government that lost 300,000 jobs in this province. We're making sure we're fixing the healthcare system. That was an absolute disaster when we took office, making sure that people have convenient care closer to home. That's what our government's doing. Those are the 3 or 4 top priorities of our government.
Hi, Premier. Alison Jones with the Canadian Press.
Hi, Alison.
How long do you expect this review will take if every Greenbelt parcel is going to be part of it?
Well, I've said it very clear. If we don't see movement on the parcels that we see that will be under review, that will have to stand on merit, then they're going back into the Greenbelt. I did it with the Ajax lands. They're going back. And just a message to the 14 owners of this property. If I don't see movement, you're going back into the Greenbelt. This isn't about the builders. I don't give 2 hoots about the builders, but they're part of the process. Eliminate them, we don't have homes. So we're going to make sure that they follow the process that the facilitator is putting out to them, making sure that they're investing billions of dollars. There won't be a penny spent of government money when they put in the roads, when they put in the water pipes and the sewer pipes. That's going to be on them. All I want are more homes for the people. We have a crisis. You come up to Rexdale, there's 160 people living up at the mall, up in Rexdale. They're newcomers, asylum seekers, and a message to the government of Canada. This is an emergency. You have to get these people working permits. I've talked to these people. They want a better life in Ontario, but they can't be sitting in some mall living there without able to have a shower. It's about the young people that are graduating out of university that are going to get a job that can't afford a home. They're going to be living in their parents' basement for the next 10 years if we don't build more homes. That's what I care about. I don't care about anything else. I care about the people. That's why I got elected, and we're going to continue focusing on what matters to the people.
Okay, so I just want to be clear on the timeline. So development is going to continue on these 14 parcels while a review is underway to determine if they should in fact have been taken out of the Greenbelt?
Based on merit, the facilitator is going to be working as she is right now, making sure that they have a responsibility to pay for the roads and the sewers, the community centers, the schools, the hospitals and long-term care homes. And it's going to be based on merit. And all the other applications are right now, there's about 700 or 800 applications. Folks, there's nowhere in the entire world outside of, I don't know, I guess communist China and North Korea, that a government comes in with no consultation and takes 2 million acres of privately held property off people. We're going to review it. The previous government in the legislation said it has to be reviewed every single 10 years. And they did. And the previous government decided with any kickback, with 0 kickback, they changed it 17 times and not a peep from anyone. So we're going to continue following a better process than what we had before, going through the Ontario Public Service, making sure it's transparent, and that shouldn't get in the way of building homes as fast as we can. That's what matters. A year down the road, folks, you're going to see homes being built at an unprecedented rate. We're going to make sure that there's supply to meet the demands of over 500,000 new people, meet the demands of young people that just go out there and they're going on their own, that they're going to be able to, number one, rent a condo or an apartment, or even better, buy a condo or an apartment, buy an affordable home, a starter home. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to exhaust every single avenue. We're going to use every single tool we have in our toolbox to make sure that happens. The worst thing we can do, folks, is sit back, throw up the white flag and say, we aren't doing it. That's not what I'm about. That's not what our government's about. Our government is about working for the hard-working blue-collar folks that I meet in factories every single week, that I meet in the malls, that I meet in the stores, that I go into. That's who I'm working for.
Hi, Premier. Lorenda Redekop with CBC News. You praised Minister Clark's integrity and his resignation, but this wasn't something you called for. You also didn't call for his former Chief of Staff's resignation. You stood behind both of them. What does this mean when it comes to your integrity?
Well, you know something? I believe strongly in the work that Minister Clark has done from the day he got elected. With the day he decided to serve the people of Brockville as the youngest mayor when he got elected, serve the people of Ontario. And when I talk about integrity, he could sit back and say, you know, Premier, I want to continue being the minister. I want to continue, even if you move me to another portfolio, but he didn't. He took the best interest of the people of Ontario at heart. He took the best interest of our party at heart and said, it's time for me to step aside and let someone else move forward with this file. We have one of the best people in our caucus, Minister Calandra, that has a proven record in anything he has done to make sure that he builds homes. We have great associate ministers with Rob Flack, one of the brightest business minds that we have down here at Queen's Park, will be his associate minister. We're going to make sure that we build transit with the leadership of Prab Sakaria, because we know the 600,000 people or even 700,000 people of Brampton in that whole corridor, they want the 413. Mayor Brown wants the 413. People need it. Have you ever driven down the 400, folks? It's getting as bad as the 401 right now. We're going to build the 413. We need cooperation from the federal government. Our environmental assessment is second to none in the world. There's no reason in the world that the federal government should slap another environmental assessment to purposely slow down the build of the 413. We were elected in a mandate to build the Bradford bypass, build Highway 413, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Following up to what Siobhan was asking about John Mutton, the person who sources have said is Mr. X. I get it, you take pictures with a whole bunch of people, thousands of people, but you're seen in multiple photos with him. It looks like he went to a lot of PC events. A lot of your cabinet ministers are also seen in photos with him. What is your relationship with this person, and what did you know? Or perhaps, how did you not know something when this is somebody who's writing on his social media, hashtag MZOs or us?
Yeah, well, first of all, anyone that does advocacy work for anyone, if you don't follow the rules, you're going to be held accountable. I do take pictures with thousands and thousands of people. Also, what I brought to my attention, the same person was taking pictures with previous premiers, with leaders. You know, some people go around and they take pictures, and I take pictures with everyone. I'm walking down the street, I'm taking pictures. Matter of fact, I don't think there's anyone out there that takes more pictures with people, absolute strangers. I don't run through their background. I don't run through what they're doing and what they need to do. I just be a gentleman, and if they want to take a picture, they take a picture.
Hey, Premier, it's Charlie Pinkerton from
Hi, Charlie.
Trillium. Who is paying for the legal fees for yourself and others in the government in the various investigations that have taken place and continue to take place into the Greenbelt?
Well, I can't speak for anyone else. Right now, I don't have a lawyer. So I'm just going to sit down. Someone has a question, I'm going to answer it truthfully. Just the same as when I sat down with the Auditor General. I answered it truthfully. I don't, you know, at that time, I didn't say I need a lawyer, but in saying that, I'm going to continue cooperating with any investigation. I'm going to cooperate, be it the Integrity Commissioner or anyone else. And I'm going to answer it truthfully, which I always do. I'm going to come out. I'm never hide from the media. I don't run away for weeks and avoid the media. I'm out here addressing the media's questions, tough questions, but I'm always going to be transparent with the people. Same as with the pandemic, when we were going through the pandemic. You know, I rattled off all the other areas that we improved, but with the support of Team Ontario, with the nurses and the frontline healthcare workers and the doctors and the manufacturers, we made it through the pandemic. And I quoted the CBC saying we're second best in the world when it came to the pandemic, making sure people are getting vaccinated. It wasn't me that was doing it, it was Team Ontario. We need that pandemic approach when it comes to building homes. We need everyone on side because it's the right thing to do. And the folks that want to play politics, You can play politics that have no solution, that say no, that vote against everything. They vote against building roads. They voted against building new hospitals. They voted against every single piece of legislation when it comes to healthcare. They vote against everything. They're the parties of no. We're the party of yes. We're getting it done. Our track record speaks for itself, folks. You look at any single ministry, you know, we're knocking it out of the park on the economy. There's everywhere in the world. People are talking, they're talking about Ontario. They aren't talking about some state in the US or over in Asia. They're talking about Ontario because we've created the environment and the climate and the conditions for companies to come here and thrive and prosper and grow and hire thousands of people and making sure their lives are better. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, back to the point. So do I gather correctly that you aren't aware of whether it's the government or the PC party or anyone else who's paying the legal fees for everyone under investigation in the government, or is there an answer to that question?
Again, that's up to the people. If they get a lawyer, I'm not at liberty to discuss their private finances. I'm just not. We're going to make sure that we cooperate with any investigation moving forward. We agreed the process wasn't up to par, but we also agree we're going to fix the process. We're doing that right now as we speak, the 14 recommendations, but make no mistake about it. This is not going to deter me from building homes for the people that need homes. You need to get out and go and talk to the average people. Talk about affordability. Talk about the food prices going up and the gas prices going up and how they can't afford homes. And another message to the Bank of Canada, enough is enough. You're trying to kill the economy. You personally are responsible for creating inflation. Companies do not want to invest into new equipment because of the interest rates. A lot of builders and people can't afford to get a mortgage because they're struggling. They're going to be losing their homes. That's on your shoulders. I'm working my back off 24/7 to make sure we have a strong economy, we have a great healthcare system, great education system, and making sure people can put food on their tables. That's what I can control.
Thank you, everyone.